The observation station hung in the darkness of space like a metal spider. Its sensors pointed toward the glowing sphere of quarantine barriers that surrounded human space. Ambassador Velia stood before the main viewport, her forearms crossed in a gesture that her species used to show deep thought. She had watched this barrier for 30 years, monitoring the strange creatures called humans who lived inside their cage. The Galactic Concordate had built this prison 200 years ago, right after humans discovered how to travel faster than light. The decision had been unanimous. Among all the elder species, humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to take risks that would kill any sensible being. They came from a world that should have crushed them, where gravity pulled twice as hard as normal, where predators hunted in packs, where storms could flatten cities. Instead of dying out, humans had conquered their planet and reached for the stars. Belkia remembered the reports from the first contact teams. Humans had ignored warning beacons around black holes because they wanted to study them up close. They had landed on planets with acidic atmospheres just to see what was there. They had tried to communicate with hostile species that other races avoided for good reason. Concordate had labeled them as having terminal recklessness, a condition that made them a threat to themselves and everyone else. But Velshel had studied humans more carefully than most. She had watched their broadcasts, learned their languages, read their histories. Yes, they were violent and curious in dangerous ways, but they were also loyal and creative and surprisingly kind. She believed they deserved a chance to prove themselves, but the Conquered disagreed. The quarantine would stay in place for at least another 1,000 years, maybe longer. The alarm broke through her thoughts with a sharp sound that made her mandibles click in surprise. Her assistant, a young Thryaxian named Costel, rushed to the sensor console. His antennae were vibrating with stress. "Ambassador, we have a breach," Costel said, his voice high with worry. "Human ship has crossed the barrier." Belsham moved to the console with quick steps. On the screen she could see a medium-sized vessel pushing through the energy field that marked the edge of the forbidden zone. The automated defense platforms were activating, their weapons charging up to destroy the intruder. This had happened before, but usually the humans turned back when they saw the weapons. This ship was not turning back. "Get me a channel to that vessel," Velia ordered. "Stop the defense platforms from firing." "Ambassador, protocol says." "I know what protocol says. Do it." The communication link crackled to life. Human woman appeared on the screen, her face showing determination and something else that Valor recognized as fear being pushed down by willpower. The woman wore a dark blue uniform with insignia that marked her as a captain. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UNC Prometheus," the woman said. Her voice was steady despite the weapons pointed at her ship. "I am requesting permission to speak with Concordat authorities about a matter of galactic security." Velkia felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. Humans did not usually ask for permission. They certainly did not talk about galactic security when they were the ones locked away from the galaxy. "Captain Chen, I am Ambassador Velia. You have violated the quarantine agreement. Turn your ship around immediately, or the automated systems will destroy you." The human captain shook her head. "I cannot do that. Ambassador, we have discovered something that changes everything. The forbidden zone is not what you think it is. Explain yourself, Velsha demanded, though part of her wanted to hear what this human had found. Captain Chen leaned forward and her eyes locked onto Velsha's compound eyes through the screen. We broke into the Concorded database. We had to know why you locked us away. What we found was not a list of our crimes. We found star charts, old ones from before the Concordat was formed. These charts show that this region of space was marked as forbidden long before humans existed. The quarantine was not built to keep us in, Ambassador. It was built to keep something else out. Felkia felt her legs go weak. That was impossible. The Concordat had built the barrier specifically for humans. Everyone knew that. The historical records were clear. But humans were good at finding things that others wanted to stay hidden. They were persistent in ways that drove other species crazy. You are saying the Concordant lied? Felkia asked slowly. I'm saying they forgot the truth, Captain Chen replied, or they hid it so well that even they stopped remembering why. Ambassador, we are going deeper into this forbidden space. We are going to find out what is really out here. You can either help us or stop us, but we are not turning back. The channel went dead. Felkia watched as the human ship accelerated away from the barrier, heading into the dark space that no one had explored for thousands of years. The defense platforms tracked it but did not fire because Velsha had disabled their automatic responses. Costel was staring at her with shock. Ambassador, you let them go. The council will remove you from your position for this. Shaw turned to her assistant and made the gesture that meant acceptance of consequences. Perhaps they will, but if that human captain is right, then we have much bigger problems than one diplomat breaking the rules. Send a message to the High Council. Tell them we need an emergency session and tell them that the humans are asking questions we should have asked a long time ago. She looked back at the viewport, watching the tiny dot of the Prometheus disappear into the unknown darkness. For the first time in 30 years, Velsha felt something she had not expected. She felt hope mixed with fear, because humans had a way of finding trouble, but they also had a way of surviving it. The Prometheus moved through the dark space like a ghost, its sensors sweeping ahead for any sign of danger. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, watching the displays that showed nothing but empty space. Her crew had been searching for 3 days now, following coordinates that had been buried in encrypted files so old that most modern systems could not read them. Her chief engineer, Marcus Webb, had spent 2 weeks just breaking through the security protocols. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the xenoarchaeologist, stood beside Chen's chair. She was a small woman who looked too young to have 3 doctorate degrees, but her eyes showed the sharp intelligence that had made her famous in academic circles. Captain, we are approaching the coordinates now. If there is anything here, we should see it soon. Chen nodded and leaned forward. She had risked everything on this mission, her career, her ship, possibly the lives of her crew. The United Nations Space Command had not authorized this trip. In fact, they had specifically ordered her to stay inside the quarantine zone. But when she had seen those star charts, when she had realized that humanity had been lied to for 2 centuries, she knew she had to find the truth. Contact called out. Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station, I am picking up something big on the surface of a planet ahead. Very big. The planet appeared on the main Screen as they got closer, it was a dead world, gray and lifeless, with no atmosphere to speak of. But on the surface, even from orbit, they could see structures, massive structures that stretched for kilometers, made from materials that reflected their scanning beams in strange ways. "My God," whispered Dr. Tanaka, "those are ruins. Ancient ruins, but they are not from any species in the concorded database." Chen felt her heart beating faster. "Take us down, find a landing site near the largest structure." The Prometheus descended through the thin atmosphere and settled on a flat area of rock near what looked like a massive temple or monument. The structure rose at least a kilometer into the sky, covered in symbols and patterns that hurt to look at for too long. The crew prepared for surface exploration, putting on their environmental suits and checking their equipment. Chen led the away team herself, along with Dr. Tanaka Webb and their combat medic, Dr. James Carter. Carter had insisted on coming, saying that exploring ancient alien ruins without medical support was asking for trouble. Chen had agreed, though she hoped they would not need his skills. The surface of the planet was cold and silent. Their boots crunched on rocks that might have been undisturbed for millions of years. As they approached the structure, Chen could see that the symbols on its surface were not random. They formed patterns like writing, but in a language that made her eyes water when she tried to focus on it. "Archimedes, can you analyze these symbols?" Chen asked. Archimedes was the ship's artificial intelligence designed for pattern recognition and problem solving. His voice came through her helmet speaker, calm and precise. "Analyzing now, Captain. The symbols are using mathematical principles that suggest a very advanced civilization. I am detecting repeating patterns that might be linguistic in nature. However, the complexity is beyond anything in our current databases. This will take time." Dr. Tanaka was running her hands over the wall, her scanner beeping constantly. "These materials are not just old, Captain, they are ancient. I am reading decay signatures that suggest this structure was built at least 5 million years ago, possibly older. Whoever built this was here long before any of the current concorded species evolved." They found an entrance, a massive doorway that had been sealed but had cracked open over the ages. Webb examined it with his engineering eye and declared it safe enough to enter. The team activated their lights and stepped inside. The interior was vast, a chamber that could have held a small city. The walls were covered in more symbols, and in the center of the room stood a pillar of crystal that still glowed with a faint blue light. As they approached it, the light grew brighter, and suddenly the air was filled with sound, not sound exactly, but vibrations that their suits picked up and translated into something their ears could process. It was a voice speaking in a language that none of them knew, but somehow Chen could understand parts of it. The words formed in her mind like memories that were not hers. "Warning, danger, they return. Prepare." "You," Archimedes spoke urgently in her ear. "Captain, I'm receiving massive amounts of data from that crystal. It is broadcasting in multiple formats. I'm beginning to translate. Please wait." They waited in the darkness, watching the crystal pulse with light. Chen felt sweat running down her back despite the suit's climate control. Something about this place felt important in a way that made her afraid and excited at the same time. After what felt like an hour but Was only 10 minutes, Archimedes spoke. Again, translation complete. Captain. You need to hear this, the voice came. Through their speakers clearly now. Speaking in English that sounded flat. And artificial, we are the progenitors. We built the garden worlds across this galaxy, we seeded them with life. Designed to survive and fight. The devourers come in cycles, stripping galaxies of all life. We fought them, we stopped them, but we could not destroy them. They return every 10 million years. When you find this message, the cycle begins again. The worlds we built, the death worlds where life must struggle to survive, these are your sanctuaries. These are where warriors grow. Do not hide from what comes. You were made to fight. Do not fail where we succeeded only at great cost. The message repeated, but Chen was not listening anymore. She was thinking about Earth, about how hard life was there compared to other worlds, about how humans had evolved to be persistent hunters, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, about how human history was full of wars and survival against terrible odds. Dr. Tanaka's voice was shaking. Captain, are you understanding what this means? Earth was designed, we were designed, humanity was created to fight something called the Devourers. Chen activated her communication link to the ship. Archimedes, send everything you have gathered back to Earth. Immediately, encrypt it with the highest level protocols and send a copy to Ambassador Velia at the monitoring station. She deserves to know the truth. Transmitting now. Captain Chen looked at her team. They all understood what they had found. The Concorded had not just been hiding humanity, they had been hiding from the truth that something terrible was coming. Something that had destroyed civilizations millions of years ago, and humanity locked away in their quarantine zone might be the only species designed to fight it. We need to search this entire facility, Chen said. If the progenitors left warnings, maybe they left weapons too. We have work to do. The High Council chamber of the Galactic Concordant was in chaos. Ambassador Vila had never seen anything like it in her entire career. The chamber was a massive sphere where representatives from 200 species floated in their preferred environments, connected by translation systems and holographic displays. Right now, every single representative was trying to speak at once. The transmission from the Prometheus had arrived 6 hours ago. Captain Chen had not just sent it to Vila. She had broadcast it on every major channel, including public networks. Within an hour, every species in the Concordant knew about the progenitors, the warning, and the creatures called Devourers. The carefully maintained peace was cracking like thin ice. Belkia watched as the council speaker, an ancient being called Elder Tom, tried to restore order. Tom was from the eldest race, the species that had founded the Concord 50,000 years ago. He looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, beautiful and terrible at the same time. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ages. Silence, Tom commanded, and the chamber fell quiet. Immediately, we will address this matter with the dignity it deserves. Ambassador Velshaw, you allowed the human ship to pass. You have violated protocols. Explain yourself. Belsha moved to the center of the chamber, knowing that her career was over, no matter what she said, but the truth mattered more than her position. Elder, I allowed them to pass because they asked questions that we should have been asking ourselves. The human captain was right. The Forbidden Zone predates our quarantine. Of humanity, I have reviewed the original records from 50,000 years ago. The truth is there, buried in archives, that no one has accessed in millennia. Representative from the Krell species, a warlike race that had been pacified. When they joined the Concorded, spoke up what truth that we have been hiding. From fairy tales, the devourers are myth stories that primitive cultures tell to explain cosmic disasters. Belsha turned to face the Krell. Then explain the deep space monitoring stations. Explain why 6 of them have gone silent in the last 3 months along the galactic rim. Explain why our long-range sensors are detecting anomalies that match the energy signatures described in the progenitor records. The chamber fell silent again. Elder Tom Raw's light dimmed slightly. You have accessed classified information, Ambassador. Yes, I have, because after the human broadcast I went looking for the truth. And I found it. Felkia pulled up holographic displays that filled the chamber. The eldest, remember, your ancestors fought the devourers 50,000 years ago. They lost 90% of the galaxy's population in that war. After they won, after they pushed the devourers back, they made a choice. They decided to forget. They classified every record, every bit of data about that war. They told themselves and their children that it would never happen again. Tommel did not deny it. His silence was confirmation enough. Another elder, this one from a species Velshaw did not recognize, spoke in a voice like grinding stones. We chose peace. We chose to rebuild rather than live in fear. Was that wrong? It was understandable, Velshaw said, trying to keep her voice respectful, but it was not wise. The devourers are returning. The monitoring stations prove it. We have been detecting their vanguard organisms for 3 months, and instead of preparing, instead of warning anyone, you voted to remain silent. You hoped the threat would pass. The chamber erupted again. Representatives were demanding answers, accusing each other, calling for action, or dismissing the threat as exaggeration. Felkia let them argue for a moment before speaking. Again, her voice cutting through the noise. The humans know, Earth knows. While we have been debating whether the threat is real, they have been preparing for war. She pulled up images from Earth and the human colonies, shipyards working at full capacity, factories on Mars producing weapons and armor, the asteroid belt being mined for resources at rates that were almost reckless. United Nations Space Command mobilizing every vessel they had. Look at them, Belshaw said. They have known the truth for less than a day, and they are already preparing to fight. Not because they want to fight, but because that is what they were designed to do. The progenitors made death worlds like Earth to breed warriors, species that could survive anything, species that would not give up even when facing impossible odds. A young representative from the Shimmery species, a race known for their scientific minds, spoke up. But they are dangerous. They have no concept of proper caution. They will get themselves killed, and they might take others with them. Felshaw made a gesture of agreement. Yes, they are dangerous. They are violent and reckless, and they scare us. That is exactly why we need them. We concorded species have lived in peace for so long that we have forgotten how to fight. Our weapons are defensive. Our tactics are designed to minimize casualties. Our culture values harmony and cooperation above all else. These are good things in times of peace, but we are not in times of peace anymore. She pulled up footage from the human historical databases, wars on Earth, conflicts that had killed millions, weapons that could destroy entire cities. The Concorded representatives recoiled from the images. This is what humanity is, Belcha continued. They understand destruction because they have practiced it. They know how to fight total wars because they have fought them against each other. They have concepts like mutually assured destruction and acceptable losses that make no sense to us. They terrify us because they are what we have tried to evolve past, but maybe that was a mistake. Maybe we needed to keep some of that violence, some of that willingness to do terrible things to protect what matters. Elder Tom Rao's light pulsed slowly. You are asking us to release the humans from quarantine, to arm them, to turn them loose on a threat that might destroy the galaxy. I'm asking you to give them a chance to save it, Velia said, because if the Devourers are truly returning, then our peaceful ways will not stop them. We need warriors, and we locked away the best warriors in the galaxy because they scared us. The chamber was quiet now. Vila could see representatives thinking, calculating, weighing the risks. She knew what they were afraid of. If they released the humans and there was no threat, then they would have unleashed a dangerous species for nothing. But if they did not release the humans and the threat was real, then everyone would die. Admiral Marcus Okafor of the United Nations Space Command appeared on the communication channels. He was an older human with gray hair and scars on his face that spoke of combat experience. His presence was commanding even through the hologram. Honorable members of the Galactic Concord, Okafor said, I am not asking for your permission to defend ourselves. If the Devourers are coming, we will fight them whether you help us or not, but I am offering you an alliance. Work with us, share your technology, let us share our tactics. Together we might have a chance. Divided we will definitely fail. Tom dimmed his light in thought for a long moment. Finally he spoke. The council will vote all in favor of releasing humanity from quarantine and forming defensive alliance. Indicate now. Velsho watched as the votes came in. It was not unanimous. Some species voted against it out of fear or pride, but enough voted in favor. The quarantine was ended. Humanity was free, and the galaxy would face the Devourers together. The training facility on Kepler Station was a strange place where two different philosophies of war were trying to merge into something that might actually work. Ambassador Velia walked through the corridors, watching human Marines teach Concorded soldiers how to fight in ways that made her uncomfortable. In one training room, a human sergeant was demonstrating close combat techniques to a group of Thriaxian soldiers. The Thriaxians were good with weapons and tactics, but they had never learned to fight with their hands. Their culture considered it primitive. The human sergeant, a woman named Rodriguez, was explaining why it mattered. Your weapons will fail, Rodriguez said, demonstrating a movement that ended with her holding a practice knife against a training dummy. Your shields will go down. Your ammunition will run out. When that happens, you need to be able to fight with whatever you have. Your body is a weapon if you know how to use it. One of the Thriaxian soldiers clicked his mandibles in disagreement. But this is barbaric. We are civilized beings. Rodriguez smiled, but it was not a happy Smile, the devourers do not care about civilization. They care about consuming everything in their path. When they board your ship, and you have nothing left but your body, what will you do? Ask them politely to stop. The Thriaxian did not have an answer. Rodriguez continued the lesson, showing them pressure points and ways to use their natural body structures as weapons. It was brutal and efficient, and Velshaw could see the Thriaxian soldiers starting to understand despite their discomfort. In another section, human engineers were working with Concorded scientists to design new ships. The Concorded had excellent defensive technology, shields that could absorb enormous amounts of energy, and faster than light engines that were more efficient than anything humans had built, but their weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy, to give enemies a chance to surrender. Commander Webb, the chief engineer from the Prometheus, was arguing with a shimmery scientist about weapon placement. On a new ship design, we need forward F. Facing heavy weapons, Webb insisted. Multiple redundant systems. When we engage the enemy, we need to hit them hard and keep hitting them. The shimmery scientist made a gesture of confusion. But this design leaves the rear of the ship vulnerable. It is unbalanced. That is the point, Webb explained. We are not designing a ship that can run away. We are designing a ship that charges in and does as much damage as possible before it goes down. Yes, some ships will be destroyed. That is acceptable if we destroy more of theirs. The shimmery looked horrified. Acceptable losses. You plan for your own ships to be destroyed. I plan for reality, Webb said. In war, people die. Ships are destroyed. If we pretend otherwise, we lose. Better to accept it and plan around it than to be surprised when it happens. Felkia moved on before the argument could escalate. She found Admiral Akefer in the command center studying holographic displays of the defensive line they were building in the Sagittarius arm. The Admiral looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Ambassador Akefer greeted her with a nod. How are our joint training exercises going? Poorly, Vila admitted. Our people are trying, but the cultural differences are significant. Your soldiers think our people are too soft. Our people think your soldiers are too violent. Finding a middle ground is difficult. Akefer smiled slightly, but they are trying. That is what matters. In a few weeks they will start to understand each other. The humans will learn to value the Concorded emphasis on preserving life. The Concorded will learn that sometimes violence is necessary to preserve life. Both lessons are important. Velsha joined him at the display. The defensive line is almost complete, but Admiral, do we have enough ships? The estimates from the progenitor data suggest the Devourer fleet will number in the thousands. We have what we have, Akefer said. 300 human vessels, 500 Concorded ships plus support craft and defensive platforms. It is not enough if we fight a conventional battle, but we are not going to fight conventionally. He pulled up tactical displays that showed battle plans Velia had never seen before. Human strategies from their wars on Earth, modified for space combat. Ambush tactics, guerrilla warfare adapted to 3 dimensions, suicide runs that would tie up multiple enemy ships. It was ruthless and clever and terrifying. Your people will hate these plans, Akefer said quietly. They involve deliberate sacrifice, ships that will not come back, crews that know they are on one-way missions. This is not how they Concorded fights. No, Velsha agreed. But it might be how we survive. Have you found volunteers for these suicide missions? Akapper looked at her directly. Every human crew volunteered. We had to turn people away. Your people have also volunteered, though fewer of them. But there are some, the Krellel especially. They remember war, even though it has been generations since they fought. An alarm interrupted them. The communication officer called out. Urgently, Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Prometheus. Captain Chen says they have found something. The main screen lit up with Captain Chen's face. She looked exhausted but excited. Behind her, Vila could see the interior of some kind of ancient facility. Admiral Ambassador, we found it, Chen said. The arsenal, the progenitor weapons cache they mention in their records. It is hidden in a pocket dimension, accessible only through a specific set of coordinates. The weapons here are beyond anything we have. Planet killers, star destroyers, and one weapon that might be able to stop the Devourers. What kind of weapon? Akapper asked. Chen glanced at something off-screen and her expression became serious. It is called the Sunfire Array. It can generate energy bursts equivalent to a nova, focused and directed. One shot could take out a capital ship. 10 shots could destroy a fleet. But Admiral, there is a problem. There always is, Akapper said. What is it? The array requires a biological crew to operate. The systems are too complex for artificial intelligence, and the radiation it generates will kill anyone operating it within hours, maybe faster. This is a weapon that requires its crew to die to use it. The command center went silent. Velkia felt her heart's beating fast. A weapon that powerful, but at such a cost. It was the ultimate human concept, she realized. Victory through sacrifice. Akapper did not hesitate. Can you move it to the defensive line? Already working on it, Chen said. We will have it in position in 48 hours. Admiral, I need to ask something. My crew and I want to be the ones who operate it. We found it, we understand it, and we are willing to pay the price. Velsha wanted to protest too, say that there had to be another way. But she knew there was not. She had studied humans long enough to know that once they made a decision like this, they would not change their minds. They had found their purpose. Permission granted, Captain Akapper said, his voice rough with emotion. But you have 48 hours to train backup crews, just in case. Understood, Admiral. Prometheus. Out. The screen went dark. Akapper stood still for a moment, then turned to his staff. Get me every ship, Captain. We need to finalize battle plans, and someone find me every piece of information we have on Devourer tactics. We are going to win this fight no matter what it costs. Velsha watched the Admiral work, coordinating the defense of the galaxy with the same intensity he might bring to any task. She understood now why humans were so dangerous. They did not just accept death, they embraced it when it served a purpose. They turned sacrifice into a weapon. It was terrifying and inspiring at the same time. She only hoped it would be enough. The Devourers arrived like a plague, their ships blocking out the stars. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Sunfire Array as thousands of bioships dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Sagittarius arm. Each ship was massive, grown rather than built, pulsing with organic life that existed only to consume. They moved with purpose toward the defensive line where the coalition fleet waited. Chen's crew was down to skeleton numbers now. The radiation from the array's power core had already started affecting them. Dr. Carter had given them all injections to slow the damage, but it was only delaying the inevitable. They had maybe 6 hours before the radiation would kill them, probably less. Once they started firing, all stations. Report ready, Lieutenant Rodriguez said. From the tactical station, her voice was steady, but Chen could see the tremor. Her hands, they all knew what was coming. Archimedes, status on targeting systems. Chen asked. The AI's voice came through. The speakers calm as always. All systems operational, Captain. I have identified the Devourer command nodes. They are the large vessels in the center of their formation. If we can destroy those, the rest of the fleet will lose coordination. Chen nodded and opened a channel to Admiral Akepper on the command carrier. Array is ready, Admiral. Awaiting your order. Akepper's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had 2 days ago, the weight of command showing in every line on his face. Behind him, Chen could see the bridge of the carrier, busy with activity as hundreds of ships prepared for battle. Hold position, Captain. Let them come to us. We need them clustered before we start shooting. The Devourer fleet advanced slowly, their formations tight and organized. They had done this before. Chen realized they had destroyed countless civilizations. They knew how to win, but they had never faced humanity before. They had never faced beings who were built to survive and designed to fight back. Coalition fleet opened fire first, trying to thin the enemy numbers before they got too close. Beams of energy and kinetic projectiles tore through space. Some Devourer ships exploded in bursts of organic matter. Others absorbed the hits and kept coming. Chen watched as the first wave of defenders engaged at close range. Ships from a dozen species fighting together using tactics that mixed concorded precision with human aggression. It was not enough. The Devourers had too many ships. 4. Everyone they destroyed, 3 more took its place. The defensive line was holding, but barely. Chen could see ships breaking apart, life pods ejecting, whole sections of the formation collapsing under the weight of the assault. Admiral, we need to fire now, Chen said urgently. Not yet, Akepper replied. Wait for my signal. We need the command nodes in range. Chen watched the battle with growing frustration. More ships were dying. The Krell heavy cruiser that had fought so well in the simulations was torn apart by Boepins. A Thriaxian carrier took critical damage and started falling back, venting atmosphere and fire. Every second they waited, more people died. Ambassador Velshaw's voice came through on a private channel. Captain Chen, I want you to know that what you are doing, what all of you are doing, will be remembered. You have shown the galaxy what true courage looks like. We are just doing our job, Ambassador Chen replied, same as everyone else out there. No, Belshaw said, you are doing more. You are teaching us that some things are worth dying for. We had forgotten that lesson. The Devourer fleet pushed deeper, and finally Chen saw what Akepper was waiting for. The command nodes, those massive ships that coordinated the entire fleet, had moved forward to press their advantage. They were in range now, all of them. Chen felt her heart racing. All ships. This is Admiral Akepper. The Admiral's voice boomed across all channels. Execute plan. Valkyrie, I repeat, execute plan. Valkyrie. The coalition fleet suddenly changed tactics. Instead of holding the line, they scattered, creating gaps in the defense that looked like panic. Devourers pushed through exactly as the humans had predicted they would. They were following their instincts to swarm and overwhelm. Those instincts had worked for millions of years. Today, they would be a trap. Now, Captain Akefer ordered Archimedes lock targets. Fire when ready, Chen commanded. The Sunfire array came alive. Energy that had been building in its core was channeled through ancient systems into a focused beam of destruction that burned brighter than a star. The first shot crossed space in an instant and struck a command node dead center. The Devourer ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized by energy that nothing organic could withstand. Chen felt the radiation spike. Immediately, alarm screamed throughout the array. The temperature in the bridge was rising despite the cooling systems running at maximum. She ignored it all and called out the next target. Fire. 2. Another command node died then. Another. The crew worked through the pain, through the heat, through the knowledge that every shot was killing them a little bit faster. Rodriguez collapsed at her station after the fifth shot, her body unable to handle the radiation anymore. Dr. Carter pulled her aside and took over tactical, his medical knowledge useless against what was killing them all. Fire 6. Chen's vision was starting to blur. She could taste blood in her mouth. The radiation was breaking down her body at the cellular level, but 6 command nodes were gone. The Devourer fleet was losing coordination. Ships were colliding with each other, formations breaking apart. The coalition fleet regrouped and pressed their advantage, tearing into the confused enemy. Captain, we have lost containment on Reactor 3. Archimedes reported. We can fire perhaps 4 more times before the array suffers catastrophic failure. Then we better make them count, Chen said. Her words were slurred. She could barely feel her hands anymore. Target the remaining command nodes. Fire at will, Dr. Carter. Enter the targets with shaking hands. The array fired again and again, and again. 2 more command nodes died. 1 shot missed the targeting systems, finally failing. On the 4th shot, the array itself started to come apart. Massive sections of the ancient structure breaking off and tumbling through space. Captain, I am detecting a chain reaction in the core, Archimedes said. We have perhaps 90 seconds before total destruction. Chen looked around. Her bridge, Lieutenant Rodriguez was unconscious. Marcus Webb had collapsed. Over his console, Dr. Tanaka was still at her station, barely conscious but still working. Dr. Carter met Chen's eyes and they both understood. This was it. This was how it ended. Archimedes, calculate one final shot. Chen ordered. Target the densest cluster of Devourer ships. Every bit of power we have left. Calculating. Target locked. Captain. Fire. The Sunfire array gave everything it had in one last burst of power. The energy beam was wider this time, less focused but covering a massive area. It swept through the Devourer fleet like a wave of annihilation, destroying hundreds of ships in seconds. The array broke apart immediately after, its ancient structure finally giving up after millions of years of waiting for this moment. Captain Sarah Chen felt the bridge disappearing around her as the array came apart. She felt no fear, only Satisfaction, they had done it, they had broken the Devourer fleet, the Coalition could win now. Humanity had proven that. The progenitors were right to design them for this purpose. Her last thought was of Earth, beautiful and dangerous, the world that had made her species into warriors. She hoped they would remember this. She hoped they would understand why it mattered. Then there was nothing but light. Admiral Akefer watched from the command carrier as the Sunflower Ray broke apart, taking Captain Chen and her crew with it. He stood in silence for a moment, honoring their sacrifice. Then he turned to his bridge crew. All ships advance, hit them with everything we have. Make sure their sacrifice was not in vain. The Coalition fleet surged forward. The Devourers, leaderless and confused, tried to regroup, but it was too late. Human ships drove deep into their formation, sacrificing themselves to take out clusters of enemy vessels. Concordat ships provided support fire, their defensive shields protecting more aggressive allies. The Krell heavy fighters flew like demons, their ancient warrior culture, remembering what it meant to fight without mercy. The battle lasted another 6 hours. When it was over, the Devourer fleet was destroyed. Broken biohips drifted through space, no longer a threat. The Coalition had won, but the cost was enormous. Nearly 40% of their fleet was destroyed. Thousands of people were dead. Ambassador Vila stood on the bridge of her own vessel, looking at the debris field. She had never seen so much death. She had never imagined she would be part of something like this, but she was alive, and her species was alive, and the galaxy was safe. Now, years later, a memorial was built on Earth in honor of Captain Chen and the crew of the Prometheus. It stood in the center of Geneva, where the United Nations had its headquarters. The memorial was a simple black wall with the names of everyone who had died in the battle carved into it. At the top were the words, "They stood between darkness and light. They chose to burn so others could live." Admiral Akefer, old and gray now, stood before the memorial with Ambassador Vila. She had changed too, her carapace bearing the scars of battle, her eyes showing the wisdom that came from seeing the worst and surviving it. "Do you think it will happen again?" Velia asked. The progenitor said, "The Devourers return cycles." Akefer replied, "We found evidence in deep space of a seed ship that escaped dormant but alive. In 10,000 years, maybe less, they will return. Then we need to be ready." "We will be," Akefer said. "This time the whole galaxy knows what is coming. This time we will prepare together, and if Captain Chen and her crew taught us anything, it is that some fights are worth everything we have to give." They stood in silence, watching human and alien children play in the park around the memorial. The children did not understand the cost of what they were seeing. They did not know what had been sacrificed so they could play here safely, but someday they would learn. Someday they would understand, and when the Devourers returned, they would be ready, because humanity had shown the galaxy what courage truly meant. They had reminded civilized beings that sometimes peace must be defended with violence, that some things are worth dying for, that warriors are not barbaric relics but necessary guardians. The human ship had entered the forbidden zone and changed everything. The discovery had not just saved the galaxy, it had transformed it, and the humans, once locked away as too dangerous, were now recognized for what they truly were: Protectors, defenders, the warriors that the progenitors had designed them to be. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what it needed.